Well, greetings and salutations, everybody, and welcome back to the latest and greatest episode of the Talking Philly Sports with Matty B program here on the Edge Philly Sports with your boy Matty B on the call tonight, as usual, on this Monday, January 29th, 2024. And just like always, we have a bunch to get into. Everything seems to be active right now in the world. Well, in the world of this show, at least, I have a tendency to stay away from basketball because, well, you already know the reason there, because I have a self-imposed gag order until Joel Embiid is traded. So we don't really talk much about the Sixers on this program, but the other three teams we're going to hit on pretty heavy here tonight. We're going to hit on some Flyers, we're going to hit on some Eagles, and we're going to touch on some Phillies as we get ever so close to that magical February 14th. Pitchers and catchers reporting to Clearwater. So we're gonna get into a lot of stuff. I guess stuff is the best word I can say, because some of it is somewhat puzzling, some of it is somewhat confusing, some of it is somewhat downright stupid, and some of it is really, really, really over the top embarrassing. And we're gonna get into a bunch of those things tonight as we churn through this program, as we do every week. But before we get started on some of the main course, if you will, let's dine on some appetizers. We're going to go and start the show off every week as we do every. We're going to start the show off this week as we do every week, and that is with your day in Philadelphia sports history, because I'm a nostalgic kind of guy. I've been around a long time. I've lived through history myself, and I like to kind of dwell on it from time to time. So that's why we kind of feature it here regularly on the program, because to me, it's kind of like a gitchy thing. But, you know, I have to be transparent about a couple things, actually. First and foremost, on this program, when I do the research to kind of get the day in sports history nugget, I spend a lot of time and effort scouring the internet, scouring Bibles and books. Well, not the Bible, but books for the right things to talk about. And sometimes, a lot of times, I stumble upon the day that we're going to feature this, like today, January 29th, and I come across January 29th, and there's nothing really that juicy or tantalizing about January 29th. For example, I think I have something really good tonight. But what I usually do in the past is I'll go to a day later or a day before, or maybe a couple days before or a couple days later, and I'll kind of touch on that. I'm not doing that anymore. I am going to let fate take the wheel, so to speak. I am going to, whatever that day is in Philadelphia sports history, that's what you're going to get. And I think that's the best way to do it. That is my New Year's resolution to you. I know we're about 3 days away from the start of February, and I don't know what I'm doing talking about New Year's resolutions, because typically all those are out the door by January 4th. But you know what? This is a New Year's resolution. I made it earlier in the year, and I've stuck to it over the 3 episodes that we've done. This might even only be the second time we've been on the air since the beginning of the new year. But we're going to stay with that. So you might hear some obscure stuff as we progress through this year. We might stumble upon horse racing or boxing or midget wrestling or midget tossing or some stuff like that. If that happens to be the case, then we're going to talk about it. If it's a notable moment in Philly sports history, I am not going to shy away from it. I will become the subject matter expert for that night, just like I had to do for tonight's topic, right? I had to go back, and I actually remember this day very vividly, and this day in Philadelphia sports history, and it goes all the way back to the magical year 1993. Now, to paint the contextual picture for you, I was a ripe young lad of 20 years old in 1993. Actually, in January of 93, I was 19. Wow, I was still a teenager when this thing happened. And of course, this was the beginning of the year, which would see us through a lot of cool things in Philly sports anyway. This was the year the Phillies magically ran their way to the World Series and touch 'em all, Joe, and all that. That was best baseball season ever. But this event happened way back in January of 1993, and or January 29th of 93, and it was not sports per se, but it's sports related. And I got to give a shout out to 610 WIP. Some of you might be wondering, what is 610 WIP? Well, that is what 94 WIP used to be long before it converted over to the FM side. And when they first started out, they were on 610. And on this day in 1993, Wing Bowl. The first Wing Bowl happened in the hotel lobby of the Hyatt Wyndham, or the Wyndham Franklin Plaza, downtown Philadelphia. 150 people packed the lobby that day to watch the very first Wing Bowl competition. Of course, it was the brainchild of Angelo Cataldi and Al Morgani. I think more so Al. It was in direct response to the putrid playoff appearances of the Philadelphia Eagles of the late 80s into the early 90s. And it was pretty much it was a jab at the Eagles. It was, you know what, you're going to take football away from us. You're not going to give us football to watch playoff Super Bowl wise. We're going to create another alternate event for the sports star people of Philadelphia. And it's going to be a chicken wing eating contest, right? That's what they decided to do. And I don't think they realized what it would become. As I mentioned, on that first night in 1993, 150 people in a hotel lobby watching two contestants, that's all they had that first year, battle it out for the championship. It was won by Carmen Cordero. He ate 100 wings, the fastest. And his prize that day was a hibachi. That's right. He walked away with a grill. That was his prize. Of course, when the event finally finished in 2018, it had become new levels of debauchery and new levels of filth and new levels of all kinds of craziness, because it would take place on Friday mornings, early, like 6 a.m. And it just got way out of control. But they were actually holding it in the Wells Fargo Center at the end. 20,000 plus people would come and see this thing as it kind of zenithed and ran through its maturation process. But they pulled the plug on it in 2018. But on this day, way back in 1993, the birth of Wing Bowl, the first Wing Bowl in Philadelphia, won by Carmen Cordero for eating 100 wings the fastest. And there you go. That's your magical moment in Philadelphia sports history. As I said, I'm not going to shy away from the obscurity. I'm going to report it as it is. And that was what today was in 1993, Wing Bowl. And that segment here on the program was brought to you by the fine folks over at Dolan's, 24 East Sellers Avenue in Ridley Park, Pennsylvania, for Quizzo Music. Great times and memorabilia giveaways. Go check out PJ, Dolan's, the rest of the crew. And you never know who might fall through the door at any given time down there at Dolan's. So, Wing Bowl. Yeah, you guys remember Wing Bowl? I know. It was a huge thing. And I understood the reasoning or the satire around it at the time. I mean, the Eagles in the early 90s, late 80s, there was some seasons where they would be competitive and make the playoffs, but they weren't really a serious playoff team. And this was absolutely the counterculture of the Philadelphia Eagle playoff run. They have an event called Wing Bowl. And they would do it religiously on the Friday before the Super Bowl. It was every year. It was the Friday before the Super Bowl. As I said, at the end of it was 20,000 plus people going to watch that versus the 150 that showed up for the first one. But yeah, man, you gotta love Philadelphia, man. You gotta love it. Wing Bowl, baby. But let's kind of wash away the filth of that for a second. Now, that's not I'm saying that Wing Bowl was dirty or anything like that. It was definitely for a mature crowd. You weren't bringing too many kids, I hope, to Wing Bowl. I never participated or went to a Wing Bowl live. I used to listen to them, but I never actually drug my butt downtown to watch a Wing Bowl. So I don't know how bad it got, but I heard stories. I heard lots of stories from the Wing Bowls. But yeah, Wing Bowl. You can't get anything. You're only going to get Wing Bowl here. That's it. You're only going to get Wing Bowl on this show. Remember that, folks. For all you haters who hate me, who think I'm a negative Nancy, you're only going to get Wing Bowl here. And I don't know, that has nothing to do with me being a negative Nancy, but I'm just saying you're only going to get Wing Bowl here. All right, let's get into some of the good stuff or some of the other stuff. I ain't going to call it good. But your Philadelphia Flyers, I typically lead off with the Eagles, and that's my typical go-to. I go with the Eagles. I'm not doing that tonight. I'm going to stick away from the. I'm going to hold off on the Eagles to the end of the show because I'm done, man. I have reached such a level of frustration with this football team that I mentioned on this program last week during a very epic rant that I was seriously considering turning in my Eagles card. Like I was going to send my fan card back to South Philadelphia because I've reached such a point of just a level of disdain for the Philadelphia Eagles. I honestly hate them. I'm at that point right now where I'm embarrassed to be an Eagle fan. I really, truly am. But we'll get to the Eagles later on. That's going to be at the end. We're going to lead off tonight with the Philadelphia Flyers because this is a topic that's kind of come up a little bit over the last week or so in many different ways, and we're going to actually touch on all the ways. As the Flyers have made it to the All-Star break, it is not officially the halfway point of the season. I guess symbolically it is. The Flyers have played 50 games, so they're well into their second half of the schedule. But they are on their right now. They are currently on their union break. You know, the CBA and the NHL guarantees that every team gets a 5-day hockey-free existence every season, where they get 5 days off, and the Flyers happen to have their 5-day coincide with the All-Star break. So they started their 5 days on Sunday, and then it ends on Thursday, and then of course the All-Star break will start Friday and then run through the weekend. And the Flyers won't be back at things until February 6th in Florida, where they'll kick off the last leg of the season against the Florida Panthers. And you know, they kind of limped into this position, right? They were red smoking hot. At one point, they were only about 2 points out of first place in the Metro. They had really kind of turned people's opinions, I guess, or interests towards them, and opinions, you know, about them were changed. And then over the last 5 games, things have regulated a little bit, maybe for this hockey team. Have they? Things have kind of bottomed out, or I don't want to use the word bottomed out because I really don't believe that this team is bottomed out, and I don't really necessarily think this team is going to bottom out. But they've regulated quite a bit over the last 5 games. Some real not really good performances. A game against the Avalanche where they were kind of involved in a slugfest back and forth. They're not going to win too many of those games against a team like the Colorado Avalanche. They got skated off the ice by the Boston Bruins on Saturday, and a lot of people were giving the thumbs up to the Lightning game. You know, I think I covered the post game that night, and I did say that I give the Flyers the moral victory on this game. They were about to be skated off the ice, and they stopped that. They didn't allow that to happen. They got within 3-2 before they were unable to kind of finish the deal. But if you watch that Lightning game for about maybe half of it, midway through the second period or whatnot, they were getting skated off the ice, and they were able to kind of get some offense going. Not that they were not trying, they just weren't able to keep up. And but they were able to get offense in that game and get it close, and then unfortunately they were unable to get any closer than 3-2. And then some stinkers against the Senators, some stinkers against the Red Wings. You kind of mix all that in, and there you get your 5-game losing streak. So heading into this break, the All-Star / CBA break, the Flyers are a 25-19-6 for 56 points, which, you know, if you tapped me on the shoulder back in July and said, Matt, heading into the All-Star break, the Flyers are going to be 25-16, or what did I say, 25-19-6, firmly in third place in the Metro, sitting at about the 5th spot in the Eastern Conference when it comes to the playoffs, I would have taken you at your face value and not asked any more questions. I would have been like, okay, great, that's awesome, that's outstanding. There's probably a ton of things that have happened correctly for this hockey team as we moved in through this season, and I would not question you. I would not disparage at all. I would be very happy and pleasantly surprised. And but when we look around, some of the Flyer fans, and maybe not so much the majority of the fans, but some are starting to get a little cantankerous about the team's effort over the past week or so. And I really don't understand that. I truly don't. Well, let's say I do understand it, but I don't. I think a lot of people's, opinions about this team changed as they were red hot, and they've forgotten what this was all about. You know, Danny Briere said it back in March of last year when he took over as interim GM. He was the first one to utter the word, we are going to rebuild. Remember, before that, it was aggressive retool. Before that is we believe we're a playoff team. We believe we're a cup contending team, but we just got to tweak some things. We got to bring some things in. We got to change some things. Danny Briere was the first person to say it back in March. This is a rebuild. We've accepted that. We know that's not going to, we're not going to call it an aggressive retool. We're not going to call it a tweak. We don't have a lot of pieces, and we need a lot of pieces. And there was more going on too. The culture of the organization was at an all-time worst that it's ever been in the history of the organization. And I mean the off-the-ice stuff, the relationship with the fans, the relationship with the NHL. The Flyers were once a proud franchise, and now it was pretty much considered a second-rate franchise around the National Hockey League. So there was other things that had to be fixed than just the on-the-ice product. And whatever that was going to be, it was going to take some time. And all this is not going to happen with the snap of a finger. It's going to take time. And recognizing that there was a problem, what do they say? When you recognize there's a problem, it's the first step in solving that problem. And the Flyers did publicly for the first time. Now, I'm certain Chuck Fletcher behind closed doors during his last days, maybe trapped in that bunker of his, mentioned the word rebuild because, he's obviously not a dumb man. But, he invested a lot. But by saying it's a rebuild means everything I've tried to do for this team failed. And, hey, I can kind of buy that from Chuck Fletcher because I don't know if I would want to stand up in front of the media and a million Flyer fans and say for the last 5 years, I screwed up. I've done everything wrong. I brought in the wrong pieces. I don't think I've drafted well. I haven't made good trades. I haven't made good free agent signings. Have mercy on me. I mean, I don't know what people wanted from Chuck Fletcher at the end of all that. Now, what we got was what we needed, him to be fired, and Danny Briere to come in and spread and shed some fresh sunlight on the situation by saying this is a rebuild. And then Dan Hilferty came in, replaced Dave Scott. Keith Jones comes in as the president of hockey operations. Danny Briere is named the permanent GM, and then they get to work over the summer. And what we're finding out now, as we move through this season, it was a very busy summer for them, dealing with a lot of different things. But they went to work on trying to turn this franchise around, not just the team, but the franchise. And we saw some of the early signs of that turnaround early on in the season with the dual logos coming back to the Wells Fargo Center, the burnt orange uniforms returning, the alumni stuff that we saw a couple of days ago, honoring of Ed Schneider's birthday. Things that the team had kind of gotten away from over the last few years were back in earnest in this season. Now, there's a lot more work to be done, and there's a ton of work to be done when it comes to off the ice and on the ice. But everything that the Flyers have done this season, off and on the ice, are signs that the team is moving forward, are signs that the team is understanding the rebuild concept and trying to start over again. And it's not just the team that has to start over. It's the entire organization that had to start over. And to be where we are right now on the ice, in midst of all of this, is pretty amazing. And for the life of me, I banged my head against the wall for a long time, wondering why Keith Jones got hired as the president of hockey operations for the Philadelphia Flyers. Why in the hell would they hire this guy? And just the little bit that I've seen over this season, I think I figured it out. Keith Jones is a Flyer. He was here during those magic days. He was here when it meant something to be a Flyer. He knows what the culture is supposed to look like. And I think he was brought here to start the ball rolling on that culture being fixed. Now, whether or not he survives to when we actually hoist the Stanley Cup again, that's well down the line. But what he is here to do might be the most important work that any of the hockey presidents of hockey operations that will follow him are going to have to do. He's got to rebuild the foundation. The house is torn down. He had to cut out the foundation, that big giant hole in the ground. He had to start filling that up and rebuilding that. And he's done that, or he's done that at least somewhat through a half a season. And it dawned on me just recently, that's probably why they brought him here. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't have hockey sense, of course, or he doesn't have a nose for this business. I'm not saying any of that. But what I'm saying is I think the primary reason why he was named the president of hockey operation was he was a bridge to the past. He was the recent past, and he never truly left the organization. He saw it at its best, and he saw it at its worst. He's got the hindsight. And you know what? Why not? So with that being said, and all the things that this team has done, and all the stuff that this team has had to deal with this year, from the Cutter Gauthier, I don't want to be a Flyer, wah, 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 to the Carter Hart stuff that we'll get into a little bit later on. And to try to navigate all that, also trying to develop young players and bring them up, send them down, make sure that they're not getting their dreams stepped upon because they're getting sent down to Lehigh Valley or they're getting called up and they're not necessarily as good as they thought they were. to navigate all of that, rebuild the franchise, rebuild the culture, and to be in a position right now, 50 games into the season, where they're in a position to make the playoffs, it's a goddamn success. It's a rousing success. And I would not want it any other way. I am 100% thrilled on the progress of the Flyers. Now, there is a lot more work to be done. It ain't over, because I'm going to dwell into the mythology now, because over the weekend we did the alumni thing, right? And that was pretty cool. I was able to watch that streamed, which they didn't do that last year or any of the years in a while. I don't think since YouTube was a thing they did that. I think that was the first time, honestly. And one of the things they did, they brought in the 74-75 Stanley Cup championship team. The members of that team that were also part of the 73-74 team. So basically the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. The only Stanley Cup champions the Philadelphia Flyers have ever had. And they brought them down the center ice, and they brought out their Stanley Cup, and they regaled everybody. And I don't know if it was to get the juices flowing about what it feels like to be Stanley Cup champions again. I don't know what that was all about. But anytime you have an opportunity to honor the older, the greatest two teams in Flyer history, it's okay by me. But it got me thinking again. And a stark, cold reality washed upon me. In June, sometime this June, when the next Stanley Cup champion is crowned, that team is going to be given the Stanley Cup. They're going to skate around whatever arena they are in, and they're going to show it off to that whatever fan base they're in front of. Then they're going to take that cup. It's the actual Stanley Cup, by the way. They're going to get it for the summer. They're going to take it around, show it to their parents, their girlfriends, drink champagne, beer, fruit juice, whatever they're going to do with it. They're going to drink out of it. They're going to kiss it. It's going to tour around the team's towns, right? Then in the fall, they're going to give it back to Toronto, back to the Hockey Hall of Fame. The Hockey Hall of Fame then is going to put the cup in the shop, and it's going to create a plate, a nameplate with every member of that team's name on it, and it's going to slap it on the Stanley Cup. And that team is going to get a replica cup that they keep at their facility to say, hey, we won the Stanley Cup. They don't keep the real cup. They keep a replica. Now, I got to thinking, we all know about Stanley Cup mythology. Just because every team that gets put on the cup, one team has to come off the cup. Because if they didn't do it like that, the Stanley Cup would be about 85 stories tall, and you need a crane to drive it around. You couldn't manage it. So what they do is they give the team 50 years. 50 years a team gets to be on the Stanley Cup. And then on the 50th year, they got to come off in order for the new plate to go on, because they can't make the cup any bigger. Well, guess who's up this year? Guess what team is coming off the Stanley Cup this summer? It's the 73-74 Flyers. That's right. After this summer, there will be only one stamp. Now, that plate will be taken off and placed in the Hall of Fame in a place of reverence next to the other plates that were removed. I mean, they don't ever forget about it, but it will no longer be on the Stanley Cup. So we will go down to one team represented on the Stanley Cup. That's the 74-75 Flyers. And guess what's going to happen next June? When that Stanley Cup champion grabs the cup, skates it around, takes it home, drinks champagne, fruit juice, and beer out of it, then turns it back into the league, and they put it in the shop. Well, they're going to take another plate off. Guess what plate that's going to be? It's going to be the 74-75 Flyers. So in a matter of 1.5 calendar years, the Flyers will no longer have representation on the Stanley Cup, barring, of course, a complete accelerated rebuild, and we're a cup champion this year or next year. But let that sink in, folks. That's a hard reality that nobody's really talking about. But we're going to be off the Stanley Cup. And one of the things that kept, I think, a lot of Flyer fans going on the older side, me being one of them, was that we could always say, well, at least we're on the cup. At least we still have representation on the cup. Well, that starts to change this year. That starts to change this summer. And as we watch this team kind of be where it's at, and we don't know where this is headed. They're not winning a Stanley Cup this year, and they probably won't win one next year. But I would not be surprised that they're not a serious contender 3 years from now, 4 years from now. And I would not be surprised within 5 years that they might win one. A lot of things got to go the right way. And there's some turmoil right now with this team, and the goaltending is top of that list. But right now they sit in a playoff position. And if they can make the playoffs for the first time since 2020, and they can repair and rebuild the culture and start that on the right path, there's nothing but success that brings. Now, you might be looking at yourself, Matty B, what the hell are you talking about, you hypocritical bastard? I mean, you sit on this show day after day, week after week, rallying the fact that if the Eagles don't win a Super Bowl, then it's a failure. Absolutely. I won't sit here and deny that. You sit here on this program week after week and chastise the Philadelphia Phillies up and down for not getting back to the World Series this past year and not winning it, and saying that nothing short of a championship is a failure. Absolutely. I own that. But I'm also not a moron, all right? And I'm not an idiot, okay? I mean, you got to look at these things contextually. The Phillies and the Eagles are built to win now. I gave the Phillies a pass in 2022 because they kind of exceeded expectations. They didn't exceed my expectations in 2023. So, yes, to me, that was a failure. The Eagles has been a straight dumpster fire for years because we want to see, and my posture with the Eagles is mainly against the fan base because of their inability to see past the hazy green smoke that's in front of their eyes and they recognize what kind of team this really is. So my ire mostly with the Eagles is with Howie Roseman and with the fans, and with the Phillies was just straight up I thought they failed. But when I look at the Flyers, I look at a team that's identified that there's a problem publicly. Now, again, I'm sure they identified the problem privately, but they've identified a public problem. And in what they've and in the time that they've done that and where they are now, it's amazing to me. Let's kind of go over some numbers because these numbers are going to kind of paint a more legitimate picture of what kind of a hockey team this is. But as I mentioned, 25, 19, and 6 for 56 points. You know, we talked about the penalty kill or the power play all season long. 21 for 157, 13.4%, which is actually a sight better than it was just a month ago. They were down to 9.7% effective back in early January. So they've risen by almost 4 points in that time. So I got to give them credit there. They're getting better. The acquisition of Jamie Drysdale has helped that. And they're getting more, I think they're getting a little bit more adventurous, I guess the word is, on the power play, which is what's going to happen. And that's how you score goals in the power play without, number one, high-end talent, because they can't really generate it. So they got to kind of like, well, they don't have it, so they got to kind of generate it, right? And by doing that is you take chances. Their penalty kill has been around the league, they're second in the league right now at 85.9%. They've been shorthanded 156 times, and they've killed off 134 of them. They've scored 144 goals, and they've given up 147. Now, that's really a disparaging stat. The Flyers have literally given up 3 more goals than they've scored. And the fact that they're sitting where they are in the standings and they've given up more goals than they've scored, that's a testament to the team. It's a testament to the way they play defense. It's a testament to their fighting ability, because that's a stat that is never really tilted when you talk about a playoff team. You never really talk about a playoff team saying, well, they're being outscored. Well, no, but the Flyers are. The Flyers are averaging about 2.8 goals a game, and they're giving up 2.9 a game. So take that for what it's worth. They are painfully outshooting their opponents 1,685 to 1,413. That's about 34 shots to 28 shots a game. Their overtime record is 4-4, which is a outstanding record based on what it was last year. Remember, 3-12 last year in the overtime frame. They're 4-4 so far this year. They're 4-2 shorthanded or in the shootout. Last year they were 1-2. They've scored an amazing NHL tied for the league lead in shorthanded goals of 10. They've given the puck away 311 times, and they've taken it away 311 times, and they've given it up 353 times for 6 and 5 respectively per game. Now that takeaway giveaway, that's in their own zone. So they've taken the puck away in the other team's zone, and they've given it away in their zone. That's what that stat is. And they blocked 900 shots for 18 a game. Amazing. And that's, again, a testament to the buy-in of this team with John Tortorella's system. And then since 2021-22, the Flyers have caught 84 for 610 on the power play for about 14% effective. So numbers that kind of, they don't paint that picture. But, the goal differential is a problem. The power play is a problem. Offensively, this team is far from complete. But what they've shown on the ice, they provided us, as I mentioned with Keith Jones, by providing that new foundation to build upon. That's exactly what the Flyers are doing this year on the ice. They're providing a new foundation to build upon. Now, there's a lot of work to be done on the ice. John Tortorella has said it himself. Do not fall in love with any of the players in this locker room because it's a rebuild, and we got to make sure that we maintain that. Does that mean what does that mean? Does that mean Tippett's getting traded? Does that mean Konecny's getting traded? Does that mean Atkinson, Couturier? I don't know what that exactly means, but we've seen how the Flyers have already kind of exercised that mantra by dealing Cutter Gauthier. Now, granted, the guy didn't want to be here, so it was pretty much a no-brainer, but still, I don't think they're going to have much problem cutting away from some of these players. Now, what we got to do, and we got to make sure, and the Flyers got to make sure, is that they bring back enough talent to replace that. Now, Owen Tippett this week signed an 8-year contract extension. It's going to keep him here in Philadelphia for a long time. I like the deal. I think Owen Tippett is definitely that new type of is he a role player? Maybe not so much, but he's part of the Flyers' new identity. He's part of what the Flyers are now. And I think what he's going to provide going forward into the future is that identity. And he's going to be looked upon very soon as a veteran. And we're going to get into a trade that, obviously the Owen Tippett, Claude Giroux trade, that was a Chuck Fletcher move, and it worked out pretty well for the Flyers. But there's also another part of that trade that we're going to talk about here in a second that's worked out so far pretty good for the Flyers too. But the Owen Tippett move is definitely a move towards the future. Ryan Poehling signed a 2-year contract extension as well. Not so much a move for the future, but Poehling is a spark plug, fourth liner kind of guy, very good above average speed, provides some high tempo-ness on the offensive rush. But we still are lacking that number one center, and we're still lacking maybe another scorer to go along with that individual. And I guess in time, either through trade or through developing of our own players, that person and those people might come here. But right now, the Flyers, in my mind, as I look at them right now, are a playoff team. And honestly, I expect them to be a playoff team. Now, do I expect them to go anywhere in the playoffs? No. Do I expect them to maybe get out of the first round? No. But I expect them to bring back playoff hockey to Philadelphia. And that's another win. When you look holistically at about what's happening with this team over the last 9-10 months. So let's get into now some grading, right? Let's evaluate this team holistically, offensive, defensive, and special teams. Offensively, again, it's a very public thing. They just don't have the scores. They're being outscored by their opponents, but they also were one of the most prolific shot-producing teams in the league. They put a ton of pucks on net. Now, what does that tell you? That tells me that they have cycling ability, that they have good puck movement, that they are actually creating offense, but they're not finishing it. Now, you finish offense one of two different ways. You have natural scorers who can finish it, or you have people that are in front of the net that make a living out of cleaning up people's messes on rebounds. Now, the Flyers don't really have either one of those, right? They don't, as I mentioned, they don't have the number one centerman who's going to park his butt out in front of the net and be that guy to kind of clean up the mess. And they don't have too many sharpshooters right now. Owen Tippett is a shooter. He's a wild shooter, right? He flings that thing all over the place. And half the team is like that. And that's going to come in time. Now, those players may develop into sharpshooters, or we may have to find one. But right now, offensively, they generate the offense. They just can't finish it. And that is indicative with the shots that they have accumulated over the season and the fact that they have not scored over 3 goals per game throughout the season. So offensively, I'm going to give this team a C because you know what? You got to have both components there. You got to be able to get the shots on net and you got to be able to finish it. They can get the shots on net. They just got to find a way to finish. So I'm going to give the offense a C. They've had some offensive standouts. TK until recently was having a really good offensive season. Cam Atkinson has woken up offensively. Owen Tippett has had a good offensive season. Sean Couturier, not so much so, but they've gotten contributions from across the lineup, and that's good too. But they need to find more pure scorers. They need to find more finishers out there. So I'm going to give the offense a C. Now let's take a look at the defense. Now, as a defense, there's multiple areas you look at for evaluating a team's defense, and the number one thing, in my opinion, is penalty kill. That is the number one bread and butter of a team's defense, and this has been a widely publicized stat. The Flyers are literally one of the league's best at killing off penalties. I mentioned the stat. They are 85.9% effective shorthanded. On top of that, they've converted 10 shorthanded goals. You know what? That's pretty damn good. If you would have tapped me on the shoulder in July and said, Matt, they're going to be 85, close to 86% effective on the penalty kill. Oh, and by the way, they're going to pot 10 shorthanded goals. I would have been like, are we talking about the Flyers? But they are a very opportunistic defensive team. The other number that kind of jumps out at you when you evaluate a defense, the block shots. I have never in my life seen a team step in front of a shot more than the Flyers have in this season. 900 of them the Flyers have blocked in 2023-24 through 50 games. Averages out about 18 block shots a game. That number's been down a little bit over this past 5 games. They've been getting kind of beat the pucks. They've been kind of giving up a lot of odd man rushes. They've been kind of giving up some of that a lot more so than they have lately. But when they are in standard in front of your face, 5-on-5 or 4-on-5 defense, they are one of the best blocking shot teams in the league. And then the other stat is the shots allowed, right? The Flyers right now have allowed 20 or 28 shots a game. That is more than capable. That is more than acceptable to allow less than 30 shots a game. And that tells you a lot of things. That tells you that they're winning puck battles. That tells you that they're able to get the puck out of the zone, control, neutralize. They are not allowing too much sustained offense being set up inside of their own zone. And even if they're letting it set up, they're not allowing many goals or shots to reach the goalie. All positives when it comes to evaluating a defense. Now, some of the issues that they have on defense are kind of glaring when it comes to some of the personnel. Travis Sanheim, who I've never been big on my entire life, came in the camp. Would he bulk up, added about 25 pounds of muscle, looked really good early on in the season, has really struggled, has kind of reverted back to his defensive ways. But maybe it's a point where we have to kind of accept the Flyers are defensively. They are a shoot first, block shot mentality of a defense. They have a lot of offensively minded defensemen, not more so than Jamie Drysdale, who really probably can't play a lick of defense in this level. Well, he can chase a puck down. He can battle you in the neutral zone. He can run you down on a 2-on-1, but I don't necessarily see him really quarterbacking a lot of strategic defense, and he's not going to muck and grind. He's not going to get into the corners like that. That's not what the kind of player he is. But the players that we do rely on kind of being that kind of guy, like a Travis Sanheim, really are struggling a little bit lately. But overall, you got to be happy with the team defense. And I'm going to give that team defense an A. I'm going to give the Flyer team defense an A based on the grading curve that I provided with those areas. Now, special teams. Now, special teams is penalty kill and it's power play, right? One of the league's best, one of the league's worst, all right? I've never seen it like that. I've never seen it disparage so bad on one side to the other. It is an extreme night and day when it comes to this team. Shorthanded, they are the second best team in the league. On the power play, they're the 30th best team in the league. They are down there at the bottom. It has been greatly improved over the past month. They've risen up about 4 percentage points over the last month. But I don't see it getting much higher than that. They just don't have the stallions out there to provide that type of power play. I don't know if this cancels each other out. Do I give them an incomplete because it's so one side or it's so extreme to one side or the other when it comes to special teams for this team? Maybe the 10 shorthanded goals, maybe kind of lean it towards maybe a C+. I don't know, but one of the best penalty kills, one of the worst freaking power plays. That's got to be fixed. There's got to be a balance in there. And I would hopefully that balance comes with the power play going up and not the penalty kill going down. But right now, I can't give out a grade for the special teams because it's so extremely tilted to one side or the other. And, it's like, there's no balance there. And that's basically what I guess I give the grade as lack of balance. And the Flyers got to find some of that. So I'm going to kind of give the special teams an incomplete. But all in all, as I said, if you tapped me on the shoulder back in August and said, this is where the Flyers would be, this is how it would grade out, this is what you'd be looking at, I'd be pretty damn happy. And if you told me the burnt orange uniforms were coming back which I think we knew early on in the summer. But if you told me the dual logos were coming back, if you told me they were going to do what they did for Alumni Night, if they told me they were going to do what they did when I was honored there back in October, if you told me all those things in the summer, I would be pretty pleasantly surprised to see it kind of, transpire. But now to the other stuff, right? With all the culture stuff, with rebuilding a team, with trying to put all this stuff together, Danny Barrera and Keith Jones have had to deal with two major off-season or in-season issues. And that was one player who did not want to be here and another player who's no longer here. And I don't think you can devalue what those two incidences have done to this team. Now, I think based on what the kind of coach John Tortorella is, that these incidences are going to galvanize this team. They're going to make them the best that they can possibly be. The Cutter Gauthier thing, whatever. He's gone. We got a good player in return. Got some draft capital in return. We're going to move forward. The Carter Hart thing is a whole another ball of wax. Obviously, for those of you who are not keeping up on it, I'm going to give you the thing in the nutshell. I'm going to give you what he's implicated in. This is rumor, but it's pretty coincidental rumor to say at least. But back in 2018, Carter Hart was a member of the of Hockey Canada, of Team Canada in the World Junior Classic in 2018. This is the same squad that went on to win gold in that tournament. In June of 2000, the Canadian government, along with Hockey Canada, the governing body of hockey in Canada, like the governing body of hockey here in the United States is USA Hockey, but the governing body of Canada threw a gala for all the members of the gold medal team. And allegedly, sometime that night in a hotel room in London, Ontario, 5 players were involved in a sexual assault incident with a woman, I believe, who's been named in court documents as EM. That's her name in court documents. Now, the woman filed a complaint a few months later, or about a year later, whatever. It was investigated initially by the Ontario police. The complaint was not a criminal one. She filed a lawsuit against Hockey Canada, a civil lawsuit. Now, Hockey Canada quietly settled that lawsuit without telling anybody about it, paid her off about $3.8 million. Now, there were criminal proceedings and a criminal investigation was opened up by the London, Ontario Police Department, but that was closed in about a year. The problem with this thing was, and there's many problems with it as we still traverse through it, the money that Hockey Canada used to pay off this woman, no one could tell anybody where it came from. Was it public funds? Was it funds that were generated by the organization in terms of running the youth hockey program in the country of Canada? The country investigated Hockey Canada over this. Every member of the governing board of Hockey Canada was either fired or resigned over this scandal. And then about a year later, after the criminal investigation was closed, another criminal investigation was opened, and an investigation by the Canadian government into fraud, and an investigation by the National Hockey League, because by this point now, the majority of these 5 players were now playing in the NHL. And that process took some years. Well, finally, it all came to a head last week when 5 players from this team were asked to surrender to London, Ontario police at a time given. I don't know any of the ins and outs of that. Carter Hart took a leave of absence along with 4 other players, coincidentally, right after that announcement was made or that story broke. Now, that's why he took the leave of absence? I think it's easy. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that's the reason, but it's pretty easy to kind of speculate and kind of connect the dots on this. Now, since then, some players have turned themselves in, and one player, a guy named Alex Formanton, who was at the time, or was one time playing for the Ottawa Senators, was now actually playing in Sweden. He was charged today. So he was charged in this case. As far as the other 4, I don't know. Nothing has been reported yet. But Hockey Canada, or I say the London, Ontario Police Department, will give a press conference and update everybody on this case on February 5th. So obviously people are going to be tuned in for that. But I'm not going to get too much into the hockey standpoint or hockey aspect of what this could mean for Carter Hart. I'm not, because this is so much more than what that is. If Carter Hart is guilty, you know what? Then he deserves everything he gets. If he's innocent, I don't know how you come back from all of this, because the situation was so mishandled by Hockey Canada, was mishandled by the London, Ontario Police Department, was mishandled by the NHL. Every governing body that had their hands on this mishandled this. And what is going on in this world, man? Why is it like this? Why is there consistent cover-ups? Now there's other reports coming out through Hockey Canada of other sexual assault cases that have been quietly, hushed up. And, the ramifications of what this could mean, guilty or innocent for Carter Hart, they're going to last a lifetime, unfortunately. And, he deserves his day in court if he's charged. They all deserve their day in court, regardless of what your personal feelings might be. I think Duke Lacrosse has taught us all that at the very minimum. They all deserve their day in court, and then kind of wait to see what happens from there. So it's not looking good that Carter Hart is going to be a member of the Flyers, at least for the foreseeable rest of the season. Now, going beyond that, I don't know. But what do the Flyers do in the meantime? They got to figure something out, because Sam Ersson, who was, kind of played his way into a starting role with this team, has somewhat played his way out of the starting role, in my opinion. He's not looked too good over the last 5 games. Now, is this a case of being thrown into the spotlight and maybe a little bit gun shy? I don't know. But he hasn't played all that well. I think he's given up like 15 goals on 80-some shots. It's a weird stat. Like, it averages out to about 21 shots a game he's faced and given up 3 goals a game. Not pretty good. Cal Peterson, who is his backup right now, is not a backup goalie at the NHL level. He's not any goalie at the NHL level. Maybe he's the emergency goalie. Maybe he's the guy who sits in the dressing room and waits for someone to get hurt. I don't know. But, Cal Peterson, who was brought over here this summer in the Ivan Provorov deal, is not a NHL backup, right? Flyers have a boatload of young prospects in the system right now, goalie-wise, who are signed. They have about 3 of them that are playing somewhere else. They could bring up. Maybe Felix Sandstrom gets brought up from the Phantoms to back up Ersson. They bring one of these kids in to back up Cal Peterson down in the AHL. I don't know what's going to happen, but something's going to have to probably give with this situation over the next couple of weeks before the Flyers resume play, in order for them to get their goalie situation kind of under control, at least going forward for the rest of the season. And what happens beyond that is anybody's guess. But remember back in the summer when the Flyers took 2 goalies back-to-back in the second and third rounds? Remember how everybody kind of was sort of like head-scratching that? And a lot of the Carter Hart, now not the Carter Hart fans out there who really supported Hart as a player, because Hart's been under a lot of scrutiny here by me and by others. I never was a Carter Hart goalie guy. I just don't think he's ever going to be what we wanted him to be. But the Flyers drafted back-to-back goalies in the second and third round. And obviously, knowing what this potentially could mean in terms of this investigation, it makes a lot of sense. I believe I even mentioned it in a show over the summer about potentially this could be the reason why they did it. They're trying to cover their ass when it comes to goalies for the future, not necessarily this year. But we'll see. It kind of looks like that's really why they did it. And there's rumors out there circulating that they tried to trade Carter Hart over the summer, but nobody would take him because of this thing pending. So there's a lot of things that are kind of circulating around. But Carter Hart right now is not a member of the Philadelphia Flyers and don't have any idea when he will return. Obviously, he's got bigger issues right now to deal with. And then we're going to kind of roll with Sam Ersson as the guy, I guess, for now. But what the Flyers do for immediate backup help, it remains to be seen. But with that being said, folks, before we transition off the Flyers, and I want to pay a bill here before I do that too, we're going to introduce a new segment here tonight. That's right, I got a new segment we're going to do on the show every week. And before I do that, let's transition to my man Dave Cherry for workman's compensation, motor vehicle accident, personal injury, or criminal law. Call Dave Cherry at 610-565-0300. Trust me, this was not. I didn't plan that. All right, that just kind of happened. So please, I'm not trying to give out. I'm not trying to help Carter Hart. But, I get that, right? But starting tonight and going forward into the immediate future, we are going to highlight a Flyer prospect here on the program. That's right. We're going to take about 5 minutes, and we're going to talk about one of the many, many good young players the Flyers have currently languishing in other leagues around North America and the world, to include the AHL and the ECHL. And how I decided to do this was purely based off of stats. I went into the Elite Prospects database, and I saw who the number one biggest point getter for the Flyers is right now, prospect-wise, and I said, okay, we're going to lead off with him, and we're going to let this thing ride. So let's get our segment underway as our Flyers prospect segment debuts here on the program with a look at Flyers center Denver Berkey. That's right, Berkey, not Barkey, but Berkey. That's how you pronounce it. That's what his mama calls him. So Denver is a centerman, plays for the London Knights of the OHL. That is the Ontario Hockey League. For those of you who know anything about major junior hockey in Canada, I will, if you don't know it, I'll explain it. The Ontario Hockey League is a league that is part of the West, along with the Western Hockey League, along with the QGHML, Quebec Junior Major Hockey League, along with the WHL, the Western Hockey League, all fall up underneath the umbrella of the CHL, which is the Canadian Hockey League. It is the top level of major junior hockey in Canada. It really kind of supplements the NCAA here in America. It's kind of equivalent to that level here in the United States, but these players get paid. They are professional hockey players for those teams. But Denver Berkey, who was drafted by the Flyers last year in the third round, 95th overall. Why is that? Why am I bringing that up? Because I mentioned a little bit earlier about the Owen Tippett trade, right? Well, remember back when Drew was sent to the Florida Panthers for Owen Tippett? Well, there was two other parts of that trade. There was a 2024 first-round draft pick coming back to the Flyers, which the Flyers will use this year. And there was a 2023 third-round pick, which you're looking at who that was. So that's right. Denver Berkey is now a part of Claude Giroux and Owen Tippett lore because he is the draft pick that we got from the Florida Panthers in that trade. So through 40 games, Mr. Berkey has scored 24 goals, 40 assists for 64 points. He has accumulated 16 penalty minutes and a gaudy plus 28 for Berkey. And now I want to take a look at one thing. Let me bring this up for you here real quick because I wanted to kind of show off some of his skill set for you of what he could provide the Flyers as a scorer. Sorry about that. I got some audio playing in the background, but I wanted to kind of bring some things up here so you can kind of take a look at Denver real quick. I'm not going to spend much time. We're going to break down a little film about him. Let me key it up here. This is from a game that he played earlier this season up there in London, Ontario. Let's bring it up here. So there you go. You got the big screen. Let's let this bad boy roll. So we're going to come out the zone. There's Denver down here at the bottom of your screen. That's actually he's up here on the top of your screen. Sorry. He's going to come out and he's going to look at now. There's a couple things that I like about what he's done already. This is your standard two-on-one breakout. But what I like about Denver, and that's him right there in the center of the screen. Look at his head. Look where he's faced. Look where his eyes are on. His eyes are straight on that net. He is not looking anywhere but up ice on the net. He has got a nose for the net. Any good centerman better have that. And that is a trait that you want from a young player. Now, he is a younger player. It's only 17. But look at the nose for the net, doesn't stop, and he finishes off the 2-on-1. Again, it's not really showing off his ability, but I like the nose for the net. His head was up the entire time. But that is your let's put his thing back up here. There you go. There's your Flyer prospect of the week. We will break down one of these guys every week here on the program until we get through all of them. And hopefully by the time we get through all of them, we have a whole nother draft class to talk about this summer. But there's Denver Berkey for you folks. That's right. The Flyers' third-round pick, 95th overall this past draft. He is the draft pick, the third-round pick that came back to the Flyers in the Claude Giroux trade. That also got us Owen Tippett, and that also gets us a first-round pick for this year in the draft. So there you have Denver Berkey. And there you have my Flyers, man. A very comprehensive, almost hour-long breakdown of the Philadelphia Flyers because I believed it was due and we needed to talk about it. And we needed to talk about it as much as I talked about it. So let's now transition because now that I've warmed myself up and, got all nice and happy, let's talk about your Philadelphia Eagles. As I mentioned at the top of the program, I have reached a boiling point with this football team. I have reached a boiling point with the way this football team views the fan base. And I've reached a boiling point with the way this organization is run. And that boiling point came to a head last week when when I, a lot like you, were waiting with bated breath for that press conference. Now, in the back of my mind, waiting for this press conference, I was thinking to myself, why the hell am I waiting for this thing? We all know what this is going to be. We all know what kind of garbage, propaganda, snake oil, blow smoke up your ass kind of press conference this is going to be. We're not going to get any answers. One, we're not going to get any answers from that fraud Howie Roseman. Two, we're not going to get any answers from that clown Nick Sirianni. And three, we're not going to get the hard questions given to them by this fraudulent media of the Eagles because everyone's afraid of losing their credentials or their privileges, whatever the hell it is. So I feel really violated by the fact that I didn't listen to that inner voice by saying, Matt, why are you wasting your time with this? Why are you wasting your time listening to this crap? But you know what? I did. And not to mention that they took 9 days from the time the season ended to get this thing out. They also made people wait a half hour later than they actually were supposed to go on while they were doing something else. So all that slap in the face, I still came running like an obedient lapdog, right? And anyway, so I came and watched it. And then as I was waiting through the 30-minute delay, it began to kind of click on me. And I actually thought about this before, too. What in the hell took so long? Now, the excuse Howie Roseman said was because they got back from Tampa late on a Monday night. They gave everybody off that Tuesday. They did exit interviews. Then a 2-inch snowstorm fell in the Philadelphia area on Friday. And then 4 days after that, or no, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 5 days after that, they decided to do the press conference. Does that make any sense to anybody? Now, I really hope the reality of that timeline is this, that Jeff Lurie was giving them extra time for Nick Sirianni to beg for his job. I hope that was the timeline. I hope that was really what was going on behind closed doors, that Jeff Lurie was putting his thumb on that fraud of a GM of his and that clown of a coach he has, Nick Sirianni, and saying, you better come up with something and you got 9 days to do it, or I'm going to fire both of you. I hope that's what the real reality of that whole thing was, because that would make me feel better than what he said. Because he said to me was extremely a slap in the face to the Eagle fan base yet again, kind of, making fun of our IQ of calling us stupid, that we're going to believe this. And they sat down eventually and they started in on the press conference with the obligatory, we take responsibility and whatnot. I want to sit here with you right now, and we're not going to watch the whole thing because I don't have the stamina for that. But there's about a 4 or 5 minute block here I keyed on because I think this 4 to 5 minute block sums up everything you need to know about the Philadelphia Eagles going forward into 2024 and beyond. And to me, it is not a good thing because, folks, I think we are in a lot of trouble. So let me bring it up for you. As I said, I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to waste your time. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but we are going to watch a little bit of it because I really think we need to see it. I really think we need to experience together as a family. And that's because that's what we are here on the show. So let me bring it up. It's up, and we're going to watch it because, as I said, I think it's important that we watch it together. We exercise our demons. I honestly do. I think we have to watch it together because maybe you guys can help me out. Maybe you guys can provide some clarity here. Maybe you can tell me what I'm seeing is not, crazy. Maybe I'm the crazy town. I don't know, but here we go. Crazy. Best question. You got to ask him what his role is. Man. All right. All right, I can't do it anymore. All right, I don't know. I don't know if you guys could hear that. Some people were telling me they couldn't hear it, but in a nutshell, basically, Nick Sirianni was explaining that the offensive system that he's going to run and the defensive system he's going to run is going to be 95% somebody else's, or 95% their person, 5% the Eagles, his 2% his. It's going to be our system. It's going to be a clown show. It's going to be a conglomeration of nutso-ness, right? And then Howie Roseman essentially, and the best question in that entire press conference, and it was, I don't know who it was, asked Nick Sirianni, if the offense is going to run itself and that defense is going to run itself, what do you do? And he kind of looked at the guy and said, I'm the head coach. Okay, well, dude, I have in my life of watching professional sports, participating in sports, watching press conferences, being at press conferences, I have never heard anybody ask a head coach, what is your role? It's clown city right now in this town. But yet there's Eagle fans out there that say, yeah, let's bring Nick Sirianni back because the optic is really bad that we fired the head coach after going to the Super Bowl last year. Well, what is this optic, folks? You know what this optic is? It's criminal and it's negligent. And I've had enough. And then Howie would go on a little bit longer about some crap about how his roster building is superior and how he's not getting away from his roster building. And at one point, he jumped in on the Kobe Dean by saying we're still high on this guy and we think he's the right fit. And then he said Zach Cunningham had a great season. I don't really know if these guys actually believe what the words are coming out of their mouth. And what I really don't know is if Eagle fans are believing them. I think a lot of Eagle fans have had it too. And I think a lot more are coming on to my line of thinking. Folks, the bottom line is this: dark days are coming. Now, of course, since this press conference, the Eagles went out and they did find themselves a defensive coordinator in Vic Fangio, and there were some reports they were negotiating with him right before that press conference. They've also found an offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore, formerly of the Chargers, formerly of the Cowboys, that Kellen Moore, who likes to run motion offense. Well, guess what? Wow, motion. Are we actually going to see people moving back up and down the formation? That's going to be something interesting to see. They've also went out today and I believe are projected to hire 2 more defensive coaches, both from the Seattle Seahawks, coming in here now to help out. Where is it? I got it right here. They've hired the former defensive coordinator, Clint Hurt, to be their new defensive line coach, and they're going to hire Carl Scott from the Seahawks to coach their D-backs. So the Eagles are remaking their entire coaching staff, but they're bringing back the 2 major bozos that are running this thing into the ground. And as I said, I'm at a epochs with this franchise right now. I've never been this far out on the Philadelphia Eagles in my entire life, and I'm not coming any closer. I am way out there, man. I am way the hell out there with this team. You're going to rue the day, folks. Remember, you heard it here. January 29th, 2024. When we resume, I think it would be on January 28th, 2025. We're going to be talking about who the new head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles is going to be. And hopefully, God friggin' willing, we're talking about who the new president of football operations and the new GM of the Philadelphia Eagles is going to be. Because I can't take more of this. I am further out than I've been. They keep pushing me away. And this press conference was a major slap in the face to every Eagle fan out there that actually understands reality and sees things in front of their eyes. So, again, if you didn't hear any of that, I apologize. It worked earlier. I'm sorry that the audio didn't come through. But that's my take on the Eagles. Clown City, folks. The circus is in town. It'll be here in September, and it's going to last till probably the end of December when the season ends for them because they won't make the playoffs next year. You're hearing it here first. They're not making the playoffs next year. Nick Sirianni may not make it through the season, and God willing, Howie Roseman gets fired at some point between now and now. Now and next now. God willing, help me out, folks. All right. Thankfully, I don't got to talk about this crap because we do have a Super Bowl to look forward to, and then a Super Bowl 58 between the San Francisco 49ers and the Cincinnati, the Cleveland Browns, and the Cincinnati Chiefs, Kansas City Chiefs. Sorry, said Cleveland, and I got all Ohio'd out. The Kansas City Chiefs. Now, here on this network, I do the show on the Saturday with Kyle Quinn called the Birds Blast, and we will be back the Saturday after the Super Bowl, and we'll wrap up that show. One of the things we're going to reveal to you, or we're going to go back over, is our predictions from back in August when we sat down and we took a look at who we thought was going to be first place, last place, the wild card teams, the championship game teams, the Super Bowl teams, and the Super Bowl winner. We're going to have an opportunity to cut that up and kind of see how we did. And folks, I'm here to tell you, this guy right here, that's right, man. I picked Chiefs and 49ers back in August. I did. I'll show you the paperwork, and me and Kyle will talk about it here in a couple of weeks. So we have that to look forward to. But yeah, Super Bowl 58 in a couple of weeks. Clown City has arrived. The circus is in town, Philadelphia. And Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni are your ringmasters, and your master of ceremonies is Jeffrey Lurie, because it's high time he starts taking some responsibility for this trick. So that's all I'm going to talk about with the goddamn Eagles, because I can't do it anymore. And we're going to move on. But before we move on, I want to remind you of the good folks over at Philly Sports Trips. If you want to travel like the pros, look no further than Philly Sports Trips at www.phillysportstrips.com. They got you covered for multiple spring training trips. I believe that one is sold out, but these two are not, I think. So hurry up, get over there and get them while you can. Don't forget, there's also the Stadium Series hockey game in MetLife Stadium, Flyers Devils, on February 17th. It should be a really good time. Hurry on out to phillysportstrips.com now and tell them Matty B sent you, and they will take great care of you. I don't know if they're going to take care of you because of Matty B, but because you're coming there. Anyway, or tell me EOP sent you. There you go. That holds a bit more clout than Matty B. Our final topic of the night, and I mentioned this last week, and I'm going to mention it again. Tell it to the ones you love, because here you go, folks. February 14th, pitchers and catchers report to Clearwater. That's right. The spring training caravan continues or begins again. We're getting that step closer to the spring and that step closer to baseball. The Phillies will attempt to kind of put the pieces back together again, which is going to be interesting because as of right now, the pieces are all the same. And that's a little concerning. And we're going to get deeper into Phillies conversation as we move through the network and move through the months and weeks here coming up. If you're jonesing for Philly stuff, head over to our website right now, because we've begun to break down our players. We've begun to break down and highlight our player spotlight series on all the Phillies players. I believe 2 of them have been done, because I know that because I wrote them. And we're basically highlight a player every week here on the EOP until we get to the start of the regular season, which is at the end of March, home opener against the Braves. So can't wait for that to begin, because it'll take some of our angst away. But the Phillies are going to quickly enter the crosshairs here, as they have done little to nothing this offseason, with the exception of signing Aaron Nola. And, of course, Rhys Hoskins is now a Milwaukee Brewer. Thank God he's officially gone. But we'll get more and more into the Phillies and as we move through the course of the winter and get closer to the regular season. And with all that being said, let me wrap things up here with reminding everybody, if after all we've talked about, you're looking for those great price and hard to find tickets, look no further than SherryTickets.com at www.sherrytickets.com. Family owned and operated since 1946, saving an additional 10% when you enter the promo code EOP10. And that is where I buy my tickets, and good folks over there. So recap. We had Wing Bowl this day back in 1993. Wing Bowl began in Philadelphia. We had our Flyers mid-season or midpoint. It's not really the midpoint All-Star break check-in, where we talked a little bit about some of the real. When you look at the Flyers and their success of this season, you should judge it not just with the product on the ice, but everything that's had to happen to this team so far this year as they begin to rebuild the organization from the front office on down, and all the stuff they've had to deal with off the ice as well. So talk a little bit about the Carter Hart situation. More to follow on that. February 5th, the London, Ontario Police Department will release a statement. Now, I'm not sure we're going to hear anything more between now and then about Carter Hart specifically, or if he's involved in this. One player has been charged in that crime. He is a former Ottawa Senator player. They bring up his name again. Alex Formenton was a former Ottawa Senator player, was playing over in Europe. He has been charged in this scandal. So more to follow on that. And then the Eagles continue to infuriate me to a new level of to a point where I don't even know if I can do it anymore. I'm seriously considering not caring anymore until sweeping reform comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Philadelphia Phillies are going to start their quest for hopefully a return to the World Series. And we talked about, and we broke down, we interviewed, or we started a new segment called Flyers Prospect. As we broke down the Flyers Prospect, we will do that once a week now until the end of time. But speaking of end of time, that is all my time for the night. I ran way over, but that's okay. It was a good show. I enjoyed it. Remember, everything that we have to offer here on the network, let me pop it up here. There's this week's lineup. Chock full every night, and things are growing and growing and getting better and better and better. And be on the lookout for all your favorite shows, as they will be here. And we got it covered from everything from nuts to butts here on the network, or head to toe. Let's go with that one. But listen, that's going to do it for me, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you guys next week. And what did they say? That's right. That is the news. And I'm out of here.